So a few months ago, let's rewind here, I get really anxious in social scenarios, so sometimes going to meet new people can be a little bit intimidating. And I went to a party that was a little bit out of my comfort zone, and I met Ruth, and I had a really great conversation, and she loved my ideas, and she encouraged me to come out to one of these events, and that's where I met Sean, and we started a project together called Stop Trashing It. He also loved one of my ideas and wanted to help me leverage it. And I really appreciate when people take the time to think that my ideas are good, because a lot of the times I think I have crazy ideas. So before I even talk about Stop Trashing It, I guess I'll talk a little bit about myself. I'm not a photographer. I don't own a business. I was a student for a long time. I would consider myself a scientist and an environmentalist. And I know as soon as you hear environmentalist, people kind of like, they cringe a little. I guess environmentalists are always trying to push the environment on people, and I'd be lying if I said that wasn't true, because that's essentially this organization that I started. I'm trying to get people to change, which is incredibly difficult and incredibly exhausting. And one day when Sean and I were working on Stop Trashing It, he asked me a question, and he said, "Why do you care so much about the environment and about the ocean?" And I couldn't answer the question. There was no logical answer. There was no one thing I could think of. And I couldn't stop thinking about the answer to the question. And I realized it was just a combination of everything that has happened to me in my life that has made me care so much. It's made me become so altruistic in wanting to do something that is bigger than me. And I have my dad to thank for that. When I was 10 years old, I started scuba diving. Who else is a scuba diver here? Cool. That's super cool. So I got certified when I was 12, and you always watch, maybe just me as a kid, I watched shows on TLC about being a doctor and like fashion shows and Discovery Channel and like what did I want to be when I was older, and I was always interested in the ocean. And it wasn't until I dove deep. Fun until I started scuba diving that I just like felt this connection. When I was underwater, everything just made sense. The noise of the day-to-day just kind of went to a murmur, and I could hear fish. I could hear everything that made sense to me. And I don't know why I related to this. Maybe it's because the majority of our bodies are made of water. I don't know. And as I grew older, I loved scuba diving. It was my passion. I became a lifeguard. I was always in the water, and my dad always said, if you want to pursue marine biology, Dalhousie is the place to be. And for me, I grew up in Montreal, Quebec, and most people in Quebec don't leave because education is really cheap there. And he kept on saying, if you want to pursue this is the place to be. So I did that. I took a huge leap of faith. And I moved all the way to the East Coast, away from my friends, away from my family. I knew no one. And that was 5.5 years ago. And looking back, I can't even believe it was 5 years ago, because so much has changed. The Maritimes now are home to me. Who else isn't from the Maritimes or from Nova Scotia now considers it home? Yeah. And when you asked the question earlier, what do you like about Nova Scotia and Halifax? It's the culture, the people. Everyone's great, everyone's nice. And we're also really environmentally forward. I was reading, super nerdy, I was reading some stuff about climate change policies in Canada, and Nova Scotia is actually doing pretty good. We're only 2 out of 12 provinces who are actually reducing our emissions, so super cool. Maybe that's why I love it so much, I don't know. But anyways, as I pursued my undergrad in marine biology and sustainability, I became almost like too aware. I was almost learning too much. I just felt like everything was shitty, everything was doom and gloom, the oceans are dying, there's plastic in the water, the climate is changing, things are moving, we're overfishing everything, and I just felt helpless. And I also felt like a huge hypocrite, because I was learning about all these things, but I didn't see how I contributed to the problem. I saw it as everything that was bigger than me. And it wasn't until I realized that if I wasn't part of the solution, I was still part of the problem. So I made a change. Super small. I said, if I don't have a reusable coffee cup, my own reusable mug, I'm not getting a coffee. And I got myself to almost 0, which is pretty freaking cool. Who else loves coffee here? A lot of people. Who only buys coffee if they can have it to go or have it in their reusable mug and they ensure that there's no coffee cup that goes in the garbage? 2 people. Yeah. And for me, when I was learning about all this, I didn't really think of the bigger picture. It was just how do I feel a little bit better? How do I turn from an advocate to an activist? How do I make these changes? And so I did that, and that felt good. And I did some other things. I pursued a master's degree in marine management, and I've always wanted to change the world, and I realized I can't do that on my own. That's a little bit of a really far out goal. And that's where this idea sort of sparked. I took an environmental education course in my last semester, and we had to do a project on analyzing some sort of ad in the media that was trying, like a Greenpeace ad or a WWF ad that was trying to get this message about the environment across. And I realized that I feel like most of us are pretty aware about what's going on in the world, There's no denying that the climate is changing, that we're losing fish in our ocean, that there's a ton of plastic. I mean, how many people here have walked on the beach and have seen some marine debris that's not natural? I see a lot of heads nodding. It's a lot. You can't ignore it anymore. It's in our face. It's in the news. You can't get away from it. And so that's where Stop Trashing It came in. I said, I'm tired of us talking about the issue. I'm tired of everyone saying it's a problem. I'm tired of being in a university where people are like, oh, the planet's going to shit, but here's my Tim's cup. And to me, that just doesn't make sense. How could you study something, devote your life to something, and not put your money where your mouth is? So that's when I decided I don't want to be a trash hole. So let's stop trashing it. And it was kind of a funny idea that started. And I filmed a really low quality. I'm not a photographer, like I said. I filmed a really low quality video of like me sitting on a rock by the ocean, trying to encourage people to stop using single-use plastics. And Sean saw the video, and Sean was like, I want to help you make this better. I took no offense because I'm not a photographer. And if anyone who has seen Stop Trashing It on Instagram? Cool. So a few people. If you haven't, make sure you go follow us. So Sean remade the video, and Sean had this really great vision. And I said, let's go to the landfill. Let's go to a landfill and let's really see what's going on here. So a few weeks ago, we went with Mike, who's back over there, and I didn't know what I was expecting. I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty aware person, but going there shook me. I was like really questioning everything I did for the next 2 days and what I was putting in the trash bin. And I guess my naivety made me think that, oh, if you put like a bottle in the garbage, somehow it'll end up getting pulled out and getting recycled. Not true. When you put it in the garbage, it ends up in a big pile, they pull out paper, and everything else goes to a landfill. It's gross. You wouldn't even know what you were looking at because it's filled over with grass, and there's some pipes coming out to catch the harmful greenhouse gases. And just seeing, before it gets filled over, just seeing what was in that pile, at first it looks like nothing, and we got closer to it, and you see chip bags and the wrapping that comes around your toilet paper and your paper towel, plastic bags. Some things were unrecognizable, but it really left an impact on me, and I don't know, did it leave an impact on you?
It did.
Yeah. So we launched this video, and Sean helped me put this together as a social media campaign. And at first I was really nervous because it's like, what if people think this is stupid? Like, what if people don't want to change? I don't know. What if people don't want to change? I don't have the answer, but I'm hoping that maybe if we just keep getting the message out there, that maybe people will. And truthfully, like I said, if we're not part of the solution, we're still part of the problem. And personally, I love going to the coast and going on walks, and maybe I don't take great pictures of it, but I still like going and enjoying it, and I know that I still want it to be pristine in years to come, and I know that I don't want to be eating plastic instead of fish. That's bogus. Right? So maybe Maybe you could think of something that there's one thing that you could eliminate. And maybe it's coffee cups. Maybe it's as simple as saying if you don't have a reusable coffee cup, you're not getting a coffee. Maybe it's not using water bottles anymore, although I feel like most people have shifted away from that. My point being is that no matter who you are, if you're, the head of, I don't even know. Everyone can do something to better the environment, and at the end of the day, it feels really freaking good. It feels really good to look back on last year and be like, I did not use one single-use coffee cup, pat on my back. So, if you maybe want to do something great for the world too, and contribute in some little way, maybe you'll stop trashing it. And that's all I have to say.